Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar about statutory maternity pay and statutory paternity pay. My name is Samantha, and I'll be co-presenting the webinar today with Graham. The webinar will last for around an hour. The information you will be receiving today is correct at the time of delivery, which is Monday the 17th of April at 11:45. Guidance is updated regularly, so we advise you to refer to gov.uk for regular updates. I start by explaining how to use the control panel and ask questions. If you're watching on a PC, laptop or Mac, you'll have a control panel like the one shown on the screen now. Near the top of the control panel in the audio box, you'll see the red muted message. Everyone's microphone is muted so that you can hear the presenters clearly. You can adjust the sound from this audio box. There's a message at the top right-hand side of the screen for anyone who can't hear Graham or myself. You can usually fix audio problems if you select the phone call button, then make sure you go back and select the computer audio button again. If this still doesn't solve the problem, please close the webinar and log back in. Halfway down the control panel, there's a handouts box. The handouts will include links to the information being covered in the webinar today. You can download these during the webinar. They are in two formats, Word and PDF. So please download in whichever format you prefer. There's a question and answer box near the bottom of the panel. Type your question in the box and then send. You can make the question box bigger by selecting the symbol at the top right-hand side of the question box. You can then resize the box. Before you leave the webinar, you can choose to save the question and answer log. PC or laptop users on the control panel, select File, and that's on the top left-hand corner of the control panel, and then Save Questions Log. For Mac users, on the GoToMeeting toolbar, select File and Save Message Log. I will show you this again at the end of the webinar. A link to a recording of the webinar, plus useful links, will be sent via email to you within the next couple of days. If you're joining us on a phone or tablet, you may see a toolbar instead of the control panel. In that case, tap on the question mark to ask a question. You should take screenshots to save answers. We suggest you do this as you go along, as you will not be able to save the questions and answers log on a mobile device. Tap on the document icon to download the handouts. The icon should already have appeared as the handouts are available for you to download. If you're unable to download the handouts, the links will be included in the follow-up email, which you will receive in the next few days. We do have colleagues in the background answering your questions during the webinar using the control panel question and answer box. They will aim to answer as many of your questions as they can today, but may not be able to reply to them all. Please note that we are unable to answer questions specific to individual circumstances. So for that reason, can we ask that you don't post any personal information into the question box, please? And finally, if we have any groups of attendees today, could I ask you to use the question box to tell us how many additional people are taking part? So, for example, if there are 3 of you taking part as a group, then please type 2 into the question box. And I'll just give you a few moments if you do need to do that now. Thank you so much. I can see some of you doing that now. So we will now begin our main presentation. During this webinar, we'll explain who qualifies for statutory maternity pay and statutory paternity pay, and what to do if your employee doesn't qualify, how much to pay and how to use the gov.uk calculators, how to claim back some or all of what you pay, keeping in touch days, and the records you need to keep. There's a lot for you to consider, but there is help and guidance for all statutory payments on the gov.uk website. All of the links mentioned in the webinar are included in the handouts. You don't have to be an expert to deal with statutory payments. There are calculators to help you check the qualifying conditions and work out the amounts you have to pay. You're less likely to make mistakes if you use calculators. If you use a commercial software package, it will usually work out statutory payments for you. Most packages check if your employee is entitled and work out how much to pay. HMRC has free software called Basic PAYE Tools. It's available for employers with up to 9 employees to use. The tools can help you to run your payroll, and there are also easy-to-use calculators on statutory payments. This list includes the 2 statutory payments we are looking at today. You don't need to be running your payroll on the Basic PAYE tools to use these calculators. You can download the Basic PAYE tools from the gov.uk website. The gov.uk website also has easy-to-use calculators to work out most statutory payments for you. We'll use the calculator later in the webinar to show you a statutory maternity pay example. There are a few important dates and phrases that you need to get to know when you're dealing with statutory maternity and statutory paternity payments for births. Your starting point is to find out the date the baby is due to be born. You use this date to decide if your employee meets the qualifying conditions. When is the baby due? No matter which day of the week the baby is due to be born, we talk about the week the baby is due. For statutory payments, the week begins on a Sunday and ends on a Saturday. So for a baby due on a Thursday or Tuesday, the week the baby is due starts on a Sunday. Another important date is the qualifying week. The employee must be employed by you in this week. If you no longer employ them in the qualifying week, you don't pay statutory payments. Once you know when the baby is due, you count back 15 weeks to find the qualifying week. So the qualifying week is 15 weeks before the week the baby is due to be born. You don't need to get a calendar out. Most calculators will work out the qualifying week when you put in the date the baby is due to be born. Your employee must satisfy certain qualifying conditions. We'll look at these conditions next, starting with statutory maternity pay. We'll say SMP from now on. SMP gives your employee a certain amount of pay to help her to take time off before and after the birth of her baby. You pay SMP for 39 weeks unless your employee decides to come back to work before the 39 weeks have passed. And that just brings us to our polling question. Let's have a look at our first polling question. Now, this is where you can take part in the webinar by selecting one of a choice of answers. No one else can see your individual reply, but we'll all be able to see the overall result, as a percentage of the total replies. And we'll show you this on the screen after the poll has closed. Your answers are useful feedback for us, so please do get involved in the polls if you can. And I will just launch that first question on the screen now. So that polling question on the screen now is, your employee has to intend to return to work to qualify for SMP. Is that true or false? Please select one from true, false, or you're not sure. And I'll just give you a few moments to put your responses through, and then I will share the results on the screen with you and let you know the correct answer for your reference. Thank you. Thank you so much. That voting's going up, and quite a few of you have voted, so thanks very much. I'll just wait a couple more seconds for the voting to slow down and then share the results with you on the screen as percentages. Thank you. That voting has slowed down now, so I will share the results on the screen. And those results on the screen of how you voted as percentages. So thank you very much for putting your replies through. And just to let you know, for your reference, the correct answer is false. Your employee must satisfy the qualifying conditions, but does not have to intend to return to work to qualify for SMP. So I will just hide that off the screen. Thank you for your responses. And let's now move on to find out about the qualifying conditions. So I will hand over to Graham to continue. Good morning to you, Graham.
Yeah, very good morning to you as well, Samantha, and a good morning and a warm welcome from myself to everyone who's joined us on this webinar today. So as Samantha said, then we'll now go on to look at the qualifying conditions. And your employee has to satisfy 4 qualifying conditions before you have to pay SMP. Those being, she has to give you proof of pregnancy. She has to have worked for you for long enough. She has to have earned enough. And she has to give you notice of when she wants her SMP to start. So I'll explain more about each of these conditions, starting by looking at proof of pregnancy. And proof of pregnancy will usually be a MAT B1 certificate or a letter. Your employee's doctor or midwife will issue it no earlier than 20 weeks before the week the baby is due. Your employee must give it to you within 21 days of stopping work to have her baby. The proof of pregnancy must show the woman's name, the date of examination, the expected date of birth, the signature of the medical professional, and their stamp or personal identification number, usually referred to as their PIN. If your employee doesn't give you proof of pregnancy, she isn't entitled to SMP from you. The next condition is that she has to have worked for you for long enough. Your employee must have been employed by you for 26 weeks by the end of the qualifying week. Now, to check if she meets this condition, you find her qualifying week, that is 15 weeks before the week the baby is due to be born. Then go back 26 weeks from the qualifying week to find the latest start date. Now, most calculators will work out the latest possible start date for you. If she started work for you after this date, even if only one day after, she isn't entitled to SMP from you. If your employee has worked for you for long enough, you then need to check if she earns enough. Your employee's average weekly earnings have to be equal to or more than the lower earnings limit, which is in place in a qualifying week. And the government sets the lower earnings limit each year. If the qualifying week is in the 2023 to 2024 tax year, the limit remains at £123 a week. You work out her average weekly earnings over a relevant period. This period is at least 8 weeks into the qualifying week. It will be longer if you pay calendar monthly or at longer intervals. You add your employee's total earnings during the relevant period together and divide by the number of weeks in that period to work out her average weekly earnings. Most calculators will work out the relevant period to use and also the average weekly earnings for you. Your employee doesn't have to be paying national insurance contributions to get SMP. But if her average weekly earnings are below the lower earnings limit, she won't be entitled to SMP from you. Finally, you need to find out when your employee plans to stop work. So has she given you notice? Your employee should give you 28 days notice of when she wants her SMP to start. In normal circumstances, SMP cannot start earlier than 11 weeks before the week the baby is due, unless the baby is born more than 11 weeks early. If she doesn't give you notice, you can refuse to pay SMP. Before you make your decision, find out if your employee has good reason for not giving you notice. This may save you time later on if she disagrees with your decision. So we've now covered all 4 qualifying conditions. To get SMP, your employee has to give you proof of pregnancy, either a MAP-B1 or a letter, have worked for you for 26 weeks into a qualifying week, have average weekly earnings at or above the lower earnings limit in a relevant period, and give you 28 days notice of when she wants SMP to start. If she meets all of these conditions, she qualifies for SMP for up to 39 weeks. And as we discovered in the polling question earlier, your employee does not have to intend to return to work with you to get her SMP. This isn't a qualifying condition. So what should you do if your employee does not meet one or more of the conditions? This employee doesn't earn enough to get SMP. Therefore, she's not entitled. In that case, you give her a form SMP1 within 7 days of making your decision. This is page 1 of the form. It lets you and the employee know you can't pay any SMP or that you're stopping paying. Page 3 lets her know she's not entitled and the reason why. She may be able to claim maternity allowance, and the SMP1 tells her how to do this. Keep a copy of the proof of pregnancy and return the original to your employee. You can find Form SMP1 on the gov.uk website. So what I'm going to do now, as Samantha indicated earlier on, is actually now link out to the calculator on the gov.uk website to show you an example of how to work out SMP. Now there is a link to this calculator provided in the handout for you today. So I am now live on gov.uk, and this is the maternity adoption and paternity calculator for employers that's on the gov.uk website. Now, firstly, before I enter start to enter details, just a reminder on the first page that you need certain piece of information, which I'll just highlight here, there, referring to the fact that you'll need the date the baby is due and also your employee's pay details. So if I click on Start Now and begin the process, the first question is, what do you want to check? Well, in this example, it's going to be maternity. The next question then is, what is the baby's due date? So I'll enter that, and in this particular example, it is the 30th of November 2023. Now, just to confirm, this is the date shown on the proof of pregnancy. You don't use the actual date of birth unless the baby is born on the due date. So having entered that date, I'll click on continue. The next question is, when does the employee want to start her leave? Now, in this particular case, the date is the 13th of November 2023. Now, just to confirm, this date can't be earlier than 11 weeks before the baby is due, unless the baby is born earlier. Now, the calculator shows you the earliest date that leave can start, and that's shown here on towards the top right, which I'll just highlight there. That's the earliest date that leave can start is the 10th of September 2023. Now, your employee should give you notice at least 28 days before she wants to start her SMP. If the baby is born early, before notice has been given, your employee should notify you within 28 days of the birth. Moving on then to the next step, and the next question asks, did the employee have a contract with you covering 25th of February 2023 to the 13th of August 2023? And you would select yes if the employee had a contract covering those dates. Now, just to confirm, the 13th of August 2023 is the qualifying week, and your employee isn't entitled if she leaves your employment before then. The 25th of February 2023 is the latest start date for your employee to have been employed by you for 26 weeks into the qualifying week. If she started on the 26th of February 2023 or later, she won't be entitled. Now, if you select no at this stage, then the calculator will let you know that your employee is not entitled to SMP. But in our particular example, I'm going to click on yes and continue, taking us through to the next question, which is, what was the last normal payday on or before Saturday, the 19th of August, 2023? So there we enter the last normal payday on or before that date there. And in this particular case, that's going to be Friday, the 18th of August, 2023. Now again, to confirm, the 19th of August, 2023 is the Saturday at the end of the qualifying week. Now the last payday on or before this date is the end of her relevant period. Moving on then to the next question, what was the last normal payday before Saturday, the 24th of June, 2023? So again, we enter the payday before that date that's shown on screen there. So in this example here, that's going to be Friday, the 23rd of June, 2023. And that's the payday at least 8 weeks before the qualifying week. Moving on then, next question is, how often do you pay the employee? And in this particular example here, the employee is paid weekly. Next question is, what were the employee's total earnings and Friday the 18th of August 2023? So here the calculator has worked out the relevant period to use to calculate her average weekly earnings. So here you enter the employee's total earnings, that's before any deductions, in this particular period. And in our example here, we're going to input £1,600. Pressing continue, it then asks how many weeks pay did the employee get between Saturday the 24th of June 2023 and Friday the 18th of August 2023. So we then select the number of weeks pay between those dates shown on screen, and in this particular example it's 8 weeks pay, so we'll select 8 payments or fewer. Next question then asks, how do you want SMP calculated? And you can choose to have SMP calculated weekly from the date the employee plans to start maternity leave, or based on her usual pay days. So here we're going to select weekly, starting on the 13th of November 2023. And that now brings up this particular page, which you can print or save, And this actually shows the calculation result for you. So if I just scroll down slightly and work my way through this, what we have for statutory maternity pay, section here, it explains that the average weekly earnings are £200, that the latest date the employee can claim SMP is the 16th of August 2023, and this ensures she has given 28 days notice. Now, the SMP start date due to pregnancy-related illness would be the 29th of October 2023. And just to explain, if your employee is unable to work because of a pregnancy-related illness within 4 weeks of the week the date the baby is due, then she must start SMP. So in this example, she cannot get statutory sick pay from the 29th of October 2023 if her illness is pregnancy-related. Finally, there's the proof of pregnancy. And there's a reminder that your employee should give you proof within 21 days of her SMP start date. So if we just scroll a little further down now, the calculation then shows 39 weeks of statutory maternity pay. Now, you can pay for up to 39 weeks unless your employee asks to end SMP. The calculator shows 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks there, at £180, which is 90% of average weekly earnings, and then 33 weeks at £172.48, which is the standard rate in this tax year. Now, you then should then check if the rate changes from the 6th of April 2024. If 90% of your employees' average weekly earnings is lower than the standard rate, let's, for example, say £130, you would then pay £130 for the full 39 weeks. If I scroll down a little further, what we will come to is a record of the questions that were asked and your answers that have brought the answers that we saw above. So you can change any of those should you need to do so. So just now going right back up to the top of this page, and you will notice the calculator also shows the employee's statutory maternity leave entitlement, including the earliest date that this can start and the latest date your employee can claim it. Now, if you'd like to know more about statutory maternity leave, then please visit the ACAS website. And we will mention it again later in the webinar. And there's also a link to the website provided in the handout for you today. Now, please remember, you are less likely to make mistakes if you use software or a calculator. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of the calculator on the gov.uk website. What I'm going to do at this point now is hand back over to Samantha, who's got the second polling question for us. So back over to you, Samantha.
Thank you very much, Graham. Yes, we do indeed have our next polling question. So we'll just launch that on the screen now. And once again, your responses are much appreciated, so please do get involved if you can. So that question on the screen now showing is, when should your employee let you know they are stopping work to start SMP? Please select one from 11 weeks before, 15 weeks before, 28 days before, or you're not sure. I'll just give you a few moments to put your responses through, and then I will share the results with you on the screen as percentages and let you know the correct answer for your reference. And just while you're doing that, I'd just like to please issue you some general reminders just to help support you through the process. So just to remind you with regards to handouts, we do have one main handout in Word and in PDF. So please choose your preferred format when downloading the handout during the webinar. Also, to remind you with regards to saving questions, if you've joined us on a phone or tablet, you can take screenshots to save answers, and we suggest you do this as you go along, as you will not be able to save questions and answers on a mobile device. But we will go over again at the end how to save the questions and answers on a PC, laptop, or Mac at the end of the webinar. And just to remind you with regards to the follow-up email, you will receive the follow-up email in the next couple of days, and that will contain a link to a full recording of the webinar, along with useful links. And finally, just to remind you that we do have colleagues that are aiming to answer as many of your questions as they can today, but they may not be able to reply to all of them. But thanks for putting all your questions through. Just now returning to the poll, quite a high percentage of you have voted again. Thank you very much. I will now close the poll and share the results on the screen with you. So those results on the screen of how you voted as percentages. So thank you all very much for taking part. Just to let you know, the correct answer is 28 days before. Your employee should give you 28 days notice of when she wants her SMP to start. So thank you again for your responses. I'm just going to hide that off the poll. I'm going to hide the poll off the screen now and just move on to the next section on recovery of statutory payments. Do you know that you can get back some, if not all, of the statutory payments you pay, except for statutory sick pay? The calculators will usually work out how much you can claim back. The amount you can recover depends on how much Class 1 national insurance contributions you paid to HMRC in a particular tax year. Use the total Class 1 national insurance figure for the employer and employee contributions for all employees. If you've paid £45,000 or less in Class 1 national insurance for that year, you can claim back the full amount plus a compensation amount of 3%. This is known as small employers relief and is to compensate for the national insurance you may have to pay on the statutory payments. If you've paid more than £45,000, you can claim back 92% of the payments you make. You'll find the national insurance figure you need on your employer payment record for the year in your payroll software. The year to check is the tax year before the qualifying week for each individual employee. And there is a link to more information about this in the handouts provided. How do you claim the amount you are entitled to recover? You can claim a reduction to your current year PAYE liabilities using your payroll software submissions. To recover statutory maternity pay, continue to send full payment submissions to HMRC on or before each payday as normal. These submissions report pay, including statutory maternity pay, and deductions to HMRC. Send employer payment summary reports to claim a reduction to your PAYE bill. Your claim will be for 92% of SMP you have paid, or 103% if you qualify for small employers relief. If you use commercial payroll software, it's important to follow the software instructions to complete and send an employer payment summary correctly. You're likely to need to complete the amount you can recover in the period, and then your software will report the total to date. Each EPS you send will let HMRC know the total amount you can recover to date in the tax year. This is the figure that HMRC system uses to calculate the reduction month by month. You need to send an EPS by the 19th of the month for a reduction to the amount due on the FPS for the previous tax month. You can check your HMRC online account from the 12th of each month to confirm the reduction that's been made to your PAYE bill and any balance you have to pay by the 22nd or by the 19th if you pay by post. If you've claimed and are entitled to employment allowance for the tax year, the reduction to employer national insurance liability will still apply. If you don't already know about employment allowance, you can find out more from gov.uk. And there's a link to this in the handouts. If the amount you can recover in a month is more than your PAYE deductions, the balance can be carried forward to the next month. If there is a balance to recover at the end of the tax year, you can apply to HMRC for a repayment. If you know you won't make enough deductions to claim back SMP and you can't afford to pay the statutory payments to your employee, you can apply for HMRC to pay you in advance. You can apply online for an advance up to 4 weeks before you want the first payment. There's a link to this page on gov.uk and in the handout. Here's an example of an employer called Toshi who applies for advance funding. I'm using some round figures to make it quicker to follow. Toshi has 3 employees. One of her employees applied for SMP from the 18th of December 2023. Her first payday is the 22nd of December. Toshi checks the date of her qualifying week, which is the 17th of September 2023. In the last full tax year, before that date, the 6th of April 2022 to the 5th of April 2023, her total Class 1 national insurance liability was £4,000. As this is below £45,000, she is able to recover 103% of the SMP she pays. Toshi uses a calculator to work out in advance that she will pay a total of £6,771.84 SMP between December 2023 and September 2024. Toshi will check the SMP rate at the start of the next tax year and adjust if necessary. She calculates that the amount she can recover, including an additional 3%, is £6,974.99. She estimates she'll be due to pay £5,000 PAYE tax and national insurance contributions to HMRC between December and September. She's entitled to employment allowance and expects a reduction of £1,800 in her bill in that period. So she estimates she will have £3,200 available to set off against the £6,974.99 that she can recover. Toshi uses these figures to claim a £3,700 advance. HMRC approves her application and she receives the payment. This is how Toshi makes the correct reports to HMRC when she starts paying SMP. Toshi pays £900 SMP, which is 5 weekly payments of £180. The FPS she submits includes SMP in the pay figure and reports PAYE tax and national insurance liability of £625. Toshi sent an EPS at the start of the tax year to claim employment allowance, and her PAYE bill is reduced by the allowance £225. She can set off the balance of £400 against the SMP she's entitled to recover. And Toshi doesn't have to pay the £625 PAYE tax and national insurance reported on her FPS. Even though Toshi has received advance funding, it's important that she still sends EPS reports to notify HMRC of the total she can recover, which for this month is £927. This is because her HMRC account will show the £3,700 funding she received as a liability that needs to be repaid. Toshi has recovered the £400 from the PAYE bill. The remaining £527 will reduce the amount she owes on her advance. Her advance started at £3,700. HMRC will reduce the balance by £527, and the balance of her advance is now £3,173. Toshi can check her HMRC account regularly to keep track of the amount that she recovers each month. So we will now move on to look at keeping in touch days. While your employee is getting SMP, keeping in touch days give you both some flexibility. There may be times when you have an employee on SMP who would be happy to attend a training course or occasionally help out, but she doesn't want to lose her SMP. Keeping in touch, or KIT days for short, allows your employee to work for up to 10 days during her maternity leave without losing any entitlement to SMP. Keeping in touch KIT days are optional, and you and your employee need to agree to use them. You don't have the right to insist that someone works KIT days, and your employee can't insist on being allowed to work KIT days. They can be worked as single days in blocks of 2 or more days, or can be taken as 10 consecutive days. Any work done on a KIT day, even as little as half an hour, will be counted as a whole KIT day. Once an employee has worked her 10 KIT days, any further work they do will cause them to lose a week's entitlement of statutory payment for the week in which they have done that work. That's all we'll cover on SMP at this stage. We'll let you know which records to keep after we look at statutory paternity pay. And I will now hand over back to Graham to look at statutory paternity pay. So back over to you, Graham. Thanks.
Yep, thanks very much, Samantha. So yes, let's have a look then at statutory paternity pay. And you may have to pay statutory paternity pay if your employee's partner has a baby. And I'll refer to statutory paternity pay as SPP from this point on. SPP gives your employee a certain amount of pay to help them take time off to care for a baby or to support the mother. SPP is paid for 1 single or 2 consecutive weeks and only after the child is born. Your employee has to satisfy these qualifying conditions before you have to pay SPP. They have to have worked for you for long enough, they have to have earned enough, and they have to give you notice of when they want SPP to start. Now, these conditions for SPP are very similar to the SMP conditions that we looked at earlier. So I'll now explain where some of them are different from SMP. So check if your employee has worked for you long enough. And there are two parts to this condition for SPP. First, your employee has to have been employed by you for at least 26 weeks up to and into the qualifying week. And this is the same as the SMP condition. If they started with you after this date, again, even if only one day after, they're not entitled to get SPP from you. The second part of the condition is that your employee must continue to be employed by you until the baby is born. So, if your employee satisfies the first part of the condition, but leaves your employment before the baby is born, you don't pay SPP. Has your employee earned enough? And this condition is exactly the same as I described for SMP. Your employee's average weekly earnings have to be equal to or more than the lower earnings limit, which is in place in their qualifying week. As with SMP, your employee has to give you notice. Your employee should request paternity pay at least 15 weeks before the week the baby is expected. An SPP cannot start until the baby is born. Notice doesn't have to be in writing unless you request it. Your employee can ask for SPP in writing using the online form. Your employee can complete, download or print an online form on gov.uk, as shown here. The form was previously known as SC3. Alternatively, you can use your own form. If they don't give you enough notice, you can refuse to pay SPP. SPP can't start until the baby is born. For this reason, you should allow some flexibility with this condition. The baby may be born early or later than expected. Before you make your decision, find out if they have good reason for not giving you notice. This may save you time later on if they disagree with your decision. If you don't accept the reason for the notice being late, you can refuse to pay any SPP. If your employee satisfies all of these qualifying conditions, you pay SPP for 1 or 2 weeks. So what should you do if your employee does not meet one or more of the conditions? If an employee is not entitled, you give them a form SPP1. This lets them know you will not pay any SPP and states the reason for your decision. Give them this form within 28 days of the day your employee gave you the notice. And you must keep a copy of the SPP1. When you're dealing with statutory paternity pay, you're less likely to make mistakes if you use a calculator. As mentioned earlier for SMP, you can use commercial software, the gov.uk calculator, or the basic PAYE tools calculator. If you use the gov.uk calculator, you would select the paternity option and then work through several steps in a similar way to the SMP calculator that I worked through earlier on. Now, we're looking into the future for this particular example to let you see the result using the gov.uk calculator. Let's say the baby is due on the 7th of January and born a week later on the 14th of January. The employee meets all the qualifying conditions and is applied to take 2 weeks SPP from the 20th of January. The calculator shows you to pay SPP for 2 weeks at the standard weekly rate of £172.48. SPP is paid at the standard rate, or 90% of average weekly earnings if that is lower. Unlike SMP, there is no higher rate of SPP. Now, Samantha mentioned keeping in touch days for SMP, but this doesn't apply for SPP. If your employee works during the SPP period, they lose the SPP for that week. So at this point now, I'm going to hand back over to Samantha, who's going to take us through the third and final polling question and then bring us to the end of the webinar. So back to you, Samantha.
Thank you very much, Graham. Yes, we do indeed now have our final polling question. And once again, your answers to all the polls are much appreciated, so please do get involved once again if you can. So that question on the screen now is, can SPP or leave be taken before the baby is born? Please select one from yes, no, or you're not sure. And once again, I will share the results with you on the screen after the poll is closed, and also let you know the correct answer for your reference. Thank you very much. Thank you. That voting's again, once again, the voting rate is quite high, so thank you. I'll just wait a couple more seconds and then share the results with you on the screen. Okay, that voting slowed down, so I will share the results on the screen. And those results of how you voted on the screen right now. So just to let you know, the correct answer is no. SPP or leave can't be taken until the baby is born. So you need to allow some flexibility with the notice condition, as the baby may be born before or after the date given. So just to say thank you very much for all your responses to all the polls. That's much appreciated. I'll just hide that off the screen now and move on to the next section on keeping records. Now, finally, we'll let you know about the records that you need to keep for SMP and SPP. Keep the proof of pregnancy, MAT B1 or letter for SMP only. There's no proof of pregnancy required for SPP. If you're paying SMP, you must have the original. If you are not paying SMP, a copy is acceptable. If you pay any SMP and don't have proof of pregnancy, HMRC can ask you to repay any payments you have claimed back from them. For both SMP and SPP, you also should have records to show the date the statutory payment started, the payment dates and amounts paid, any weeks when it wasn't paid and the reason why, and details of how much you claim back. You should also keep details of any changes to the original applications. Keep all these records for at least 3 years after the end of the tax year to which they relate to. We are nearly at the end of the webinar now. Here's a summary of what we've covered today. We've looked at the qualifying conditions for both SMP and SPP. We also covered what to do when an employee is not entitled, how to use the gov.uk calculators to work out how much to pay, how to claim back some or all of what you pay. For SMP, we looked at using keeping in touch days. This does not apply for SPP, and the records you need to keep. Another option to be aware of is that the mother can choose to end her SMP and opt to have statutory shared parental pay instead. What's left of her SMP can be shared with or claimed by her partner. You'll find the employer guide for this on gov.uk. We've mainly concentrated on statutory payments today. If you'd like to know more about your employee's statutory leave entitlement, please use the ACAS website. If you are in Northern Ireland, use the Labour Relations Agency website. Now, if you need more help, our full range of help and guidance can be viewed online from your mobile, tablet, or PC at any time. Links to further help and guidance are included in the handouts. Now, just to go over again how to save the questions and answers log. If you're using a PC or laptop and you'd like to save the questions and answers that have been shared in the question box today, select File and then Save Questions Log at the top of your control panel. You can also save the question and answers log from a Mac on the GoToMeeting toolbar. Select File and Save Questions. And if using a mobile device or tablet, you need to take screenshots as you're not able to download the question and answers log. The control panel will close at the end of the webinar. So if you want to download the handouts and the question and answers log and haven't yet had a chance to do so, we will give you time to download these at the end of the webinar. I will leave the webinar open for around 5 minutes to allow you to do this. So just to remind you, we will also send you an email including a link to a recording of the webinar and useful links within the next couple of days. Now, when the webinar has closed, you'll be directed to a short survey. Your feedback is very useful and helps us to keep developing our webinars. Please do not send any more questions now, as these will not be likely to be answered in the 5 minutes that the webinar will be left open. But once again, thank you so much for all the questions that you have put in. And just now to say thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to Graham for his presentation. Thank you to our team in the background for all their help and support. And thank you very much to all of you for joining us on this webinar today. It will now go quiet for you to download the handouts and questions and answers log. So thank you very much and goodbye for now. Goodbye.